Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Steve Clements.
Good morning, everybody. This is day 3, action-packed day. We're in the Schwarzenberg Stage. I hope all of you had a great time, because last night you were all invited to a fantastic cocktail party. You can probably hear it in my voice. The Zovina Palace, so it was a fantastic evening. We've got 2 stages open today. Of course, it's the Schwarzenberg stage, and then we've also have an action-packed day lined up in Havel. Today in this room, we're going to be discussing climate change, the upcoming COP29 summit, how to face terrorism in Africa, the media's fight against smears and information overload. That's what I need to hear about. And then next door, we're going to have sessions on fostering stability in the Middle East. That's important. Black Sea security, and Russia beyond Putin. That's very aspirational, so we'll have to see how that goes. And then we're going to have in the afternoon, in the Havel stage, of course, the closing ceremonies, which are going to be pretty magnificent. And I want to say right now, we've got a really, really great panel coming up. My good friend, Petr, Kolář, whom you heard, helped host last night, if many of you were there. Ivan Korčok and others, great. And my buddy on the BBC, Rob Cameron, on Is This Central Europe's Moment? So please, well, we're going to play a little sting video, and then Rob will be up here. Thank you all. Have a fantastic day, and keep going to those side sessions.
Hello, good morning. I'm Rob Cameron. I'm the BBC's correspondent here in Prague for the Czech Republic and Slovakia, and it's a huge privilege, a huge honor to be leading this discussion today on Central Europe, and is this Central Europe's moment? Obviously, the Ukraine war has propelled this region to the very forefront of EU and NATO decision-making, and it's given Central Europe a new dynamism and a new relevance. But is this new relevance an illusion? And if it's not an illusion, is it just temporary? We will be starting this discussion with a Slido poll, so if you want to get your phones and tablets at the ready, you can do that obviously in the Globsec app or on the website, and we'll come back to that in a second. But for now, please welcome our 4 panelists. Petr Kolář is the former Czech ambassador to Russia and the United States and a senior policy advisor to President Pavel, and also previously President Havel. Please welcome Petr. Ivan Korčok is the former foreign minister of Slovakia, also a former ambassador to the United States, and of course in the spring stood as for president of his country.
Morning.
Welcome, Ivan. Dobré ráno.
Morning.
Małgorzata Bonikowska is a leading political scientist from Poland and the president of the Center for International Relations and a professor at Warsaw University. Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry.
And Dr. Valbona Zeneli is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, specializing in transatlantic relations, globalization, and the international economy. Good morning, Val, and welcome.
Good morning.
So, thank you very much. In his famous essay of 1984 for the New York Review of Books, Milan Kundera wrote a piece. It was entitled The Tragedy of Central Europe. And in it, he said, Central Europe is not a state. It's a culture or a fate. Its borders are imaginary and must be drawn and redrawn with each new historical situation. Arguably, we are now in the midst of the most momentous historical situation since the end of the Cold War, maybe since the Second World War. So where does that leave Central Europe, and what is its fate? It's looked west since 1989, and I think several people on stage have helped it keep their gaze to the west, but some of its leaders these days are looking the other way. So what does that mean for Europe, for NATO, and for us? I said I wanted this discussion to be as interactive as possible and that you would have the chance to participate as much as possible. And there will, of course, be a chance to pose questions in a few minutes, either via the Globsec app or in the room. But we wanted to start with a poll. And it's to answer a question that I'm still struggling with, and I've lived here for 31 years. What is Central Europe? Okay, interesting. Way in the lead is the idea that it is the Visegrad group. So Germany is, I know here's Germany coming up in second place. Does it include Slovenia? Does it include more Balkan countries? What about Romania? What about Bulgaria? Can they be Central Europe? Or anywhere you can order strudel in a cafe? And that is actually a question posed by a friend of mine called Christian Jacques, who's a French historian, political scientist. And he wanted to, I think maybe did write a PhD, the whole idea of which was you can define Central Europe by whether you can walk into a cafe and order strudel. If you can, you're in Central Europe. If you can't, you're not. Panel, let's begin. Where is Central Europe? Petr.
Well, thanks for asking this question me first. I hope that somebody would answer before me and then I could follow, but I'll try to, after last night it's harder, but
yes.
I'll try to answer what I believe it's Central Europe. Central Europe is us and those who live here. Of course, this is at least two Central Europes, one post-communist and one Central Europe geographically, which is including Germany, Austria, maybe even some other countries, at least northern Italy also, and then Switzerland. But I believe that these Visegrad 4, that was something what was the project we identify with, like Central Europeans, because we had a similar history, we had a similar experience, we were leaving the communist bloc together, and we were trying to get into the European Union and NATO together. Then our dear Slovaks, they had a problem with their prime minister, Mr. Mečiar, so they were a bit slowed down, but they will join us, and we were so happy to be together with them. And by the way, for me, at least few years back, I, as a Czech, can say I was jealous that in Slovakia they had a great president, and they were on the right side of the barricade, I would say. Now I'm glad that we have a great president, right, and we are on the right side of the barricade.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute, absolutely.
Okay, no. And then, well, for our friends abroad, and especially in the United States, I remember when I came to the United States in 1990 first with Robertson Center as a postgraduate, and the liaison who was introducing me to my colleagues introduced me as a Peter Kolář from Yugoslovakia.
Well, it's better than Chechnya, isn't it? It's better than Chechnya. It's better than Chechnya. Ivan, where is Central Europe? What is Central Europe?
Yes, good morning to all of you. I'll try to respond to that, but Peter, my good friend and colleague, will survive when I elaborate a bit on a typical Czech concern expressed over Slovakia and our past and history about our Prime Minister. Yes, indeed, we've had a problem with the Prime Minister. My dear Czech friends, you might have a problem next year with your Prime Minister. Then we will be concerned in Slovakia.
Take him back.
Then on Central Europe, the opinion was changing here. When Rob asked about strudel, then the last option has got more support. For me, I'm always lost when I'm asked political questions and a geographical answer is expected. So I'd like to be more provocative and say that for me Central Europe could be Austro-Hungarian monarchy minus Western Balkans. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe Germany is not there, but
Germany's not there in your mind?
Yes.
Okay. Małgorzata.
I wanted to continue.
Sorry, Ivan. Yeah.
I only started, you know.
Yeah.
No, but the point that I wanted to make, more than geography, what matters for me, it's politics, and I don't think, and that's my firm belief and conviction, Central Europe is not a political entity, because in my view, Central Europe is and should be an integral part, what I call political West. And we can elaborate also, try to elaborate on what is the West in geographical terms, and we'll be lost. Because geographically, for me, the West contains or includes also countries in the very east of Asia. Those are free countries. So what matters is the type of governance which, I mean, defines the geographical entity. So for me, remember, please, my view of Central Europe, that it is and should be integral and firm part of what I call political West.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. Małgorzata, what is Central Europe?
Good morning once again. I come from Poland, so you can imagine that for us, when you have a strudel definition of Central Europe, we are not very happy about it.
Yes, exactly. That would leave Poland out, wouldn't it? Can you get strudel anywhere in Poland?
No.
Okay. Lots of great cakes, but not strudel.
We have our own cultural background, if I may. And I would, define it in three different ways. Actually, we have to decide, we discuss Central Europe or Central Eastern Europe. It's a big difference, because Central Europe, it's Mitteleuropa, is a very German, Austrian concept, which is not necessarily well taken in the region. Because what does it mean for us? Means that we did not exist formally as independent entities, right? So historically speaking or culturally speaking, this Mitteleuropa concept means, for us, domination of Germany, which, of course, today is not the case anymore, but culturally is very much remembered. I would say, historically, for us, there is a difference between Central Eastern Europe and Eastern Europe. How do we find the border? I guess no one maybe guesses, but it's not very difficult. By alphabet. We use Latin alphabet. Do you also? Yeah, but not everybody in the region. We have also Cyrillic, right? So for us, Eastern Europe are the countries with Cyrillic alphabet, like Belarus, like Ukraine also. It's Eastern Europe. It's also a very useful concept. But also Bulgaria could be, in this way, Eastern Europe, right? Religion also. We are all Christian, but Orthodox and Catholic, it's different. So we took our 1,000 years ago, by the way, and Poland is very proud of this history, a very long statehood, right? 1,000 years ago from the West. So Cyril and Method didn't come to us, right? So Eastern Europe, Eastern and Central Europe, and then Central Europe. There are three different concepts.
Okay.
Then one more thing is that today, I would say Central Eastern Europe is very much political concept.
Agreeing with Ivan. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
also based on the assumption that we could call it a new Europe, or this Europe also in Globsec report, it's put this way, right? These new member states who could have more energy, also because they did not participate for a long time in a history of European project, because we were in the Soviet bloc, or formally in Soviet Union, like the Baltic states, or like Poland or other countries, Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia in this case, or Hungary in the Soviet bloc, independent only formally. So we understand Central Eastern Europe concept today as a chance to be visible and also take a stronger position in this European project, which I understand that everybody encourages us to do finally.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, thank you. Val, where is Central Europe for you?
Well, Rob, from someone not coming from the region, for me, Central Europe is fully integrated into the European Union and NATO. It's very strong allies in NATO, and I'll say that with the security situation in Europe, I'll say even the center of gravity of NATO. From someone that was born in Albania and the Western Balkans, I see that many countries in Southeastern Europe, as soon as they become EU members, they start considering themselves part of Central
Very
Europe.
good, yes.
So that means that going back into the political concepts. So I see Central Europe fully integrated into the European Union with a lot of dynamism, strong political courage of the leaders in important, situations. So that is how I see Central Europe. I would like even to go further and talk about another concept that we're talking nowadays, which is the northeastern corridor. So I'd like here maybe to include the Baltics or the Scandinavian countries that are really, the center of gravity of NATO nowadays.
Right, okay. Thank you all very much. And just on that, very briefly, Putin famously said in 2016 that Russia's borders don't end anywhere. What about Central Europe's borders? Are these borders fixed? When Viktor Orban goes to a football match with a scarf that shows Greater Hungary and what is now Slovakia and Romania and so on, in his mind, with its references to Trianon and so on, the borders of Hungary aren't fixed, perhaps. And I was at the dinner at Prague Castle on Saturday nights, sitting at a table with an Austrian guy who said, yeah, for me, I think maybe Austria and Germany, we can come together again, maybe Austria should become part of Germany again. And I said, maybe don't say that out loud too much at this dinner. Do you think these borders that we see on the map today, that's it? They'll stay the same? Anyone?
Yeah, well, that's it. It will stay.
Okay, for you, yes, they're closed. Ivan?
What matters for me, once again, what Central Europe, be it defined as you have defined it, even without Strudel or not, what is the message with this, which this region is sending out to the rest of the world, if you want? And we can endlessly, once again, be engaged in a discussion about geography, about borders being, defined once forever, and so on and so on. Let's be honest and realistic. If we admit that, for example, Visegrad group could be viewed and identified as a core of Central Europe, could it be? I think that's not very provocative. Then reality is at this moment, Rob, that we are deeply divided within Central Europe. So let's talk politics. And the fact is that because of two prime ministers of Hungary and Slovakia, we are deeply divided, and the very core of Central Europe, which is Visegrad Group, is depriving itself of the leverage by which Central Europe could be a more powerful player within Europe and beyond. Let me say it very clearly and bluntly. Thanks to appeasement attitude towards Russia by Orban and Fico, Visegrad is clinically dead. I mean, let's talk, about the elephant in the room. This is reality. So we can talk about concepts, political concepts and what Central Europe can do and deliver and be something like New Europe. And what reality is that at this historical moment where the whole Europe's security, defense, and destiny is at stake, the most divisive line within Europe is within Central Europe and within Visegrad.
Okay.
So this is what matters most for me when we are talking about Central Europe, about its potential, and definitely, for example, by being critical on this, I want to say that Central Europe has manifested leadership at the most important moment when Russians invaded Ukraine. Without Central Europe, we would not be where we are when it comes to military assistance, without which Ukraine would be dead as well. So at the outset, we have delivered politically, we have mobilized, and we made it clear to the rest of the West that its entire destiny will be decided whether we support Ukraine or not. That's thanks to Central Europe.
Okay, very good. I mean, that's encompassing two questions that I wanted to ask, and we've partly answered them. So let's just go back a little bit. Małgorzata, is Central Europe dead, or in the words of Monty Python, is it just sleeping?
No, Central Europe is not dead.
Sorry, not
Visegrad
Central Europe. Is the Visegrad group dead?
That's a different
dead.
thing.
Yeah, clinically dead. Yeah.
And yeah, I agree totally. But you know, the concept of Visegrad, where the name come from historical connections between the Czechs, you know,
There's a
Poles
castle in
the
Hungary,
region,
right? A castle
the
overlooking
kings
the
who
Danube.
were meeting there.
Yeah.
And this was it was important part in medieval times, and it's today still, we are there. And I agree totally, we unfortunately, as far as this format now, we cannot use it. But in the same time, what I want to stress is we celebrate this year 20 years in the European Union. So I always compare it to the family with grown-up, you know, children. Then there are no children anymore in the organization. They are really, 20 or old year entities who can speak and have a strong voice. So I wouldn't concentrate so much in the format maybe, but on individual potential of some of these countries. And I think Poland definitely fits into this, especially after the change of the government. You mentioned Prime Minister's problems.
Okay,
we
going
had
back to
the problem with the
politics
whole
there.
government for 8 years. And now I think what we should do, and in this way I think Central Europe or Central Eastern Europe understood as our potential, those who were not contributing that much earlier, is just to speak loudly, to propose, to be active, to demonstrate our strength. Also because from the perspective of others, from one side the US, but from the other side China and Global South, we are perceived as the West.
Yes.
As the Global West, despite the fact we are maybe, for the Western Europeans, at the East. But we are a part of the Global West, and we also have very strong arguments vis-à-vis the dialogue with Global West. For example, the difference is that in this part of Europe, we didn't have colonies. We were colonized, for example, by Russia.
Yeah.
To us, Russia is an imperialistic power and the country who colonized the neighborhood, right? So we share this kind of experience jointly, which could be an asset in the global dialogues. I would not concentrate so much on the formats. I would concentrate on individual potential of the countries within much larger formula of the European Union.
Okay, so going back again to something that Ivan mentioned, of course, Ukraine, and the leadership that this region has showed just since February 2022, especially, of course, the Czech ammunition initiative, Poland's very strong stance, the Baltic states, Slovakia before Fico supplying its entire fleet of MiG-29 aircraft. So really, there is this argument that the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, whether they were former satellite states of the Soviet Union or actual members of the Soviet, occupied by the Soviet Union in the Baltics, they're really driving European policy and NATO policy on Ukraine and kind of dragging a reluctant Western Europe of France and Germany and Spain and Italy with them. Others are quite skeptical about this idea, and they say no, that the balance the center of gravity is still very much in the big European powers. How does the panel see it, Petr?
What we see
Is your country driving the response to Ukraine
I understand.
and forcing your allies to react?
Actually, we have our ups and downs and bumps on the road, as almost everywhere. But here it was quite visible. We started as with President who became the icon for the Western world, President Havel. I remember when people like musicians and actors from the United States were coming to have a picture with him. It's the opposite than it is today. The politicians want to have a picture with the musicians.
Yeah.
And we were perceived, Czechoslovakia and then the Czech Republic, as an example for others, how with the Velvet Revolution, with our clear vision to be back in Europe and to bring our experience, which was quite important for our friends and allies in the West to learn what it is to be in authoritarian regime and what it means to have a freedom and how hard it is to win freedom and how easily you can lose it like that if you don't care about it. and don't take care. So I think that we were perceived as an example for others from the political point of view, as a country which was building democracy from the bottom, then as a leader in market economy, showing that our way to somehow actually privatize what was the socialist economy. It's possible, of course, with a lot of mistakes and troubles, but we made it. And actually, the success story was here.
And today?
And today we are, I would say, we are back again, not with such a strength and not in such a romantic position as those who were showing our stories and our heroes, President Havel. But we are back, and I believe that you have mentioned the ammunition initiative and so many other things which we are doing, and some of them are done behind the scene, and we are not showing them because it's better to do it and then to speak about it and to speak about it and don't do it. So I am pretty satisfied and happy with this current situation where we are. Of course, it could. It's, you know, nothing is for granted. You know, we know that we have to do our homework first, because if you really want to be useful partner for our allies in EU and NATO, then we have to clean up first here at home. And that's something what really is pretty worrisome, because when I see that we have here, with our historical experience, for example, with the policy of appeasement and Munich agreement, that we have here so many people who believe that if we give up Ukraine, that the war would end and Mr. Putin will be satisfied. Yeah. This is crazy. Czechs should know better than anyone else that to please evil doesn't lead to anywhere, just to the hell. Okay. We have evil is then, you know, the appetite of evil is growing, and it's more and more aggressive. So let's stop Putin and push him back, and then we can say that we will be living maybe in the peaceful world.
Okay. Val, do you agree with this idea that the center of gravity in Europe has shifted to the east, and it's now these countries represented here today that are driving the response to Ukraine?
I agree that leaders in this region have shown strong leadership, strong political will, have taken skin in the game, also taking risks too, in supporting Ukraine, but also fighting more generally into raising the questions of Russia. And I believe that regions live in neighborhoods. And what we have seen, and so Russia, it's the main, has been the main security challenge for the region. What we have seen before the second invasion of Ukraine in 2022, we had a regionalized security threat in Europe, where Eastern Europe, Central Europe would look more into Russia as a security challenge, and then in Southern Europe, you had other security challenges. We are seeing more, the countries in Europe coming together also inside NATO, showing a more unified front when it comes to security challenges. And then going back to your previous question about Visegrad, I believe that those were formats and tools that were used to speed up the integration process of the region, the EU and NATO integration process of the region. And there were many countries in Southeastern Europe were trying to replicate. Well, they were not very successful in the replication process, but that was something of the past. What we have now are new initiatives that will drive the region forward, like the 3 Seas initiative that connects the region. It's a population of more than 110 million inhabitants, makes up 25% of European Union. However, it makes up only 13% of the GDP of Europe. So what are the mechanisms to drive forward more economic integration, but also more prosperity for Europe?
Thank you. I can see the clock staring in my eyes, so I want to ask a few questions. First of all, one from Slido for our panel. So where do you see the states of Central Europe in 2030? Is it with or without Mr. Fico, Mr. Orbán, Mr. Babiš, and Mr. Kaczynski? Anybody like to volunteer an answer? Gaze into your crystal ball. Perhaps not what you would
I mean,
like to see. I think what
the
you'd like to
answer-
see is clear. What do you think?
The answer is so easy and obvious. People will decide about that, whether they are here or not. We may like them or dislike, but people have freely made their choice. In Slovakia, they voted. We have a democratically elected prime minister whom I criticize. I disagree with him. He is pursuing a totally irresponsible foreign policy, driving Slovakia into isolation and embracing just Hungary, which is isolated already. But the reality is that we have to respect the result of a free and democratic election. And therefore, the answer is to that question whether we can provide an alternative to him and convince the rest of the country or majority in the country that we are providing a better alternative for Slovakia than it is having now with the prime minister. And the challenge is, I think, not the challenge, the answer to all questions, that almost all of them that we are discussing here, about Visegrad, about potential of Central Europe, and so on and so on, the answers are in our respective countries. It all starts there, whether we can provide something to our people which will be a better alternative than they are when they are expressing their support to populists. Populists like Prime Minister of Slovakia.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think let's be realistic on that and let us focus on what matters most for our people, and
Very
that's their life at home.
Okay.
It all starts there.
I'm going to ask the same question to Małgorzata and Petr in a minute, but if anybody wants to raise a question using a microphone and your brain and connect it to your mouth, please do. Okay, I'll come to you in 1 second. I will just ask Małgorzata, can you respond very briefly to this idea?
I just wanted to stress one thing. I wouldn't like to put Central or Central Eastern Europe in the category of troubles or problems with politicians. This is like everywhere. Look at the United States, look at Western Europe, look at what's happening, Italy, France, the Netherlands, name it. So we are not a kind of a special
cases, yeah.
case.
Okay.
That's one thing. Second thing, the question should be about what to do to be able to find solutions to real problems. And the problem is that the main political parties, the mainstream political parties, not do it very well. Let's be very open. And this is why people vote for populists, because people are just desperate, and frustrated. They have huge issues, and then in democracy they can express what they think. As you rightly said, we are all democracy. So if people don't find answers in the mainstream parties, we cannot blame them that they look for alternatives.
Okay,
right?
very good, thank you. Val?
Yeah, I completely agree. What we see in Central Europe, we're seeing throughout the West. So nothing special there. But I completely agree with the fact that I don't like this labeling when we focus just Central Europe on Eastern Europe. And I think there's a lot of narrative that's pushed also from outside actors. Well, think about just a little bit more than 10 years ago, we had the 16+1 initiative that was pushed by Beijing. So kind of trying to drive a wedge between the West or inside the political West. So I agree with Margaret that it's really, it's part of Europe, and some of the issues that we see here, we're seeing them everywhere. It's just that we talk more because there's a more vibrant, a younger democracy. But I will believe that it's more flexible and it's more adaptable because it's gone through so many changes in the last 30 years that it's much more resilient than democracies in the Old West, if we want to call them.
Excellent. So, gentleman over there has a question, and I will again plead for questions. The first person, remind you of the Globsec rules, who says this is less of a question and more of an observation, has to buy drinks for everybody in this room. A question, please, sir.
Peter Shikloshi from Euro-Atlantic Consultancy. No word so far about the economy. The economy is the basis of everything else. Basically the question is, can Central Europe be an economic powerhouse or driver? Because so far, Central Europe is basically the outskirts of Germany in this sense, in the economic
Excellent
sense.
question. Excellent question. Anybody like to?
Well, that's why I
Val?
mentioned initiatives such as three Seas that connect the Baltics, Black Sea, and Adriatic. We still see that there is, not full convergence with the other European countries. I believe that this is one of the most important initiatives when it comes to energy diversification, not only in the region but for all European Union. The second is transportation. We have east-west corridors, and I think we need to look more at north and southern corridors that are very important for development in the future, and also digitalization. So I think those are the three main areas where, by focusing more and attracting more investment in the region, will drive the region forward and get it, have sustainable economic growth, get it closer
Excellent.
to other countries.
Anybody else like to respond to that?
Yeah, from my side, just shortly, I would add to this potential of the businesses. After 20 years in the single market, I think the businesses from our region grown up and they have very good products and offer, and they are going global. So just mentioning Poland, we have 17,000 companies who do business out of the EU with great success, and they created global brands. So I think that's the momentum to cooperate more between countries of our region and between, not only with the Western partners. And also, if you have a comparison, Poland, Germany, we are neighbors, we cooperate very well, but German economy is in worse situation than the Polish one. So we believe that Poland could be, and other countries of the region, like a new engine in many ways for the economic development of not only Central and Eastern Europe, but also the whole EU.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I want to move on to America, gentlemen, if you don't mind. I say gentlemen because you both represented your countries there. I would wager that never has the Hilton Hotel been so full of Europeans who love America and Americans who love Europe. But it's not always a reciprocal relationship, is it? Obama didn't seem to care much about this part of the world. Trump really didn't care. Is there any evidence that President Harris, if she were to become elected, would feel any different? Petr?
Okay, well, we are here speculating because we don't know what the result of the elections would be.
But we know a little bit about what Trump thinks about the region.
Yeah, well, Trump was married to one Czech lady, and then maybe that's the reason why he has some special relationship with this part of the world. Who knows? And his daughter Ivanka is able to influence him, as we saw it in case of Syria and the attacks of the United States there. So I wouldn't say that Trump is not aware what Central Europe is or what this region means. In case of Kamala Harris, she is vice president of President Biden, and President Biden, he was actually, in what I remember, the first president I know from the United States in my career who didn't start with reaching out towards Russia, showing them the hand instead of fist. All presidents before tried. They were always, coming to their office and offering cooperation to Russia. And even President Bush Jr., he was saying when he looked in the eyes of Mr. Putin that this is a trustworthy guy he can work with. And it was in Slovenia, 2001. And then he had to change his mind. Then Obama came, and there was this reset of policy with Russia, and again reaching out and offering the hand to cooperate. And then he changed his mind later because he got the lessons from Mr. Putin, which were quite painful. And Biden, who was his vice president, he was part of it. So he didn't come to Oval Office with this naive approach. He started to be, from the very first day, quite clear and tough.
And do you think that Kamala Harris will inherit that?
As his vice president, she had to be influenced by that, and she is influenced. And I'm sure that there are other people around him, President Biden, and would be around her, who know what Mr. Putin is, what this region means, and how we can cooperate. By the way, Poland is the country which it doesn't matter what government they have a clear view about Russia. In our case, we have some experience with some presidents and politicians who still naively believe that Russia could be the partner without having the lesson first.
Yeah.
I think that Russia needs to be squeezed and taught that
Right. Very good.
partnership is something different than to be blackmailed.
Okay. Ivan, briefly, if you would, also former ambassador to Washington.
Yes. Can I contradict you, what you said?
Please do.
Said in your initial remark. And you said that in this Hilton hotel there are so many of us who love America. That's simply not true.
Okay.
We love, at least I'm speaking on my own behalf, I love my own country. And why I'm saying this? Because I went through presidential campaign, and one of the most mobilizing point was that I love America. I was labeled an American agent. And one politician said about me, your problem is not that you are American agent, because everybody knows that. Your problem is that you look like American agent. And dear friends, that is our problem of this gathering, of this bubble, that we who are, I think, absolutely right to stress and help maintain transatlantic bonds, but we have to do it in a way that there is not an impression that we do it because we love America. That's not true. That's number one. Now, you asked about Trump or Harris. Yeah. I don't want to talk about Trump or Harris, and I'm not neutral on Trump, because when I was handing over my credentials to him, he ignored me completely, and he only spoke with my wife. So you know, I'm a bit biased on that. But what concerns me more, dear friends, lovers of America, or I don't know what we are not talking about our own interests as Europeans when it comes to what we want from America. How do we want to maintain transatlantic bond? What is the leverage with which we can talk, you know, on Capitol Hill? Because for them, the American perspective is a bit different as we would like to see it here in Prague and elsewhere. They, rightly so, they're looking at the world through the Chinese perspective. You know, I'm overdoing, but you know what I mean by that. And I believe it's not good for us that at this moment we are talking either Harris or Trump, but that's the decision for American citizens. Rather, I think we should sit and talk as Europeans and try to have at least a common basis. I mean, for example, within the European Union, what would be our attitude? What are our expectations? By the way, I'd like to also say that...
Briefly, if you will, Ivan.
Yes. That Ursula von der Leyen, she, you know, presented in her guidelines her vision, you know, as a president before European Parliament. Do you know how many times she mentioned transatlantic relationship? Not a single one. Right. Do you know how many times she mentioned or she used the word defense? 30 times. Right. What I want to say, that whoever wins in the United States, they will be extremely nervous about our own ambition, which I entirely and wholeheartedly support, to create defense union within the European Union. But we must talk and engage with whoever wins in the United States. Otherwise, we start off, you know, this relationship, whether with Harris or Trump, with a bitter, you know, aftertaste. They will be nervous, but I think it's okay that we have our own ambition. But let's talk to them. But we are rather sitting and watching what's going on. On the debate on the 10th of September. But that's not our strategy.
Thank you. 2 minutes and 16 seconds to get to both Małgorzata and Val on this.
Briefly, Poland, of course, traditionally is, I think, the most pro-American society in the EU. But it is because of historical reasons. So we love America because it was for us a symbol of freedom, fight against regimes. So this was why, right? Now We need America, and everybody knows it, because we don't feel secure. So we treat Americans as big brothers who are able, in the moment if something happens, they are physically able to act. But I think, and my last point is, the best way of loving our ideals and values such as freedom and liberties is to now do work at home in the EU, because looking always at America, it doesn't help really. We were very lazy in accepting that fact that there is this big brother to protect us. Now it's high time to wake up and use this decade at least just to be at least able to take in our own hands our own security. And this way, I think Americans would love it as well.
Very good. Val, final word to you.
Well, just to add to the conversation, I think the war in Ukraine showed that United States and NATO is indispensable for European security, and all the the conversations about European strategic autonomy, I think they have died so far. But I'll talk more about the need to have strategic responsibility of the European Union inside NATO and do more. And so I think what I believe that in both administrations, we can just read the national security strategies of both administrations, and there are some common points that I think that Europeans should take note and look more carefully. We know about revisionist Russia. We know about the concerns and challenges with China, and what Europe should do to have a united front when it comes to China. It's going to be an issue for both any administration in the United States, because it has full bipartisan agreement on how to view China. And then the third point, I'll say doing more in defense budgets.
Okay.
It has been repeated since the very beginning that the Europeans need to take more responsibility when it comes to that. And last point, Indo-Pacific. Look more broadly how the European Union can support also the United States in Indo-Pacific.
Right, thank you very much. The screen is red. I'm sorry, Ivan. We can continue this over a coffee in a second. Thank you. Sorry to my panel. I had one more point, but thank you very much, Petr. In a previous war, of course, Jacques Chirac said that this region had missed a good opportunity to shut up. Ils ont manqué une bonne occasion de se taire, which is something I hear from my own other half. He's from Paris. But it seems that this region will not shut up, and I think we can all be very grateful for that. Thank you once again to my panel. Please give them a round of applause. And please stay in your seats for the next session, which is on climate change. Thank you.